Welcome to my channel, KC, the Sledge Storyteller. Carrie Chuck here to talk about the wonderful world of storytelling and to open up discussion about how we can tell the best stories we possibly can. So I'm going to keep saying that Sledge number 2 is making progress. I love what I see in development from my artist John Rawson. He's a fantastic artist. He gets me excited every time there's more to see. But last week we talked about the heroic spectrum, and today's topic is the beginning of a topic series. It's superheroes in the various metallic theme comic book ages, starting with the Golden Age. There was a Platinum Age, but I only touch upon that lightly since it segues into the Golden Age, and also since superheroes had not truly begun during that time. But beyond just a history lesson, I want to give insight on what we can learn of the evolutionary process of developing superheroes and what we can creatively pick up from that. But now, the Platinum Age begins with basically the first successful comic book in 1933, Funnies on Parade. This was a repackaging of newspaper strips put together by a company called Eastern Color. It included such titles as The Bungle Family, Joe Palooka, Keeping Up with the Joneses, Mutt and Jeff, Regular Fellers, and Somebody's Stenog. Several other companies got on with the idea and did the same thing. That brings us to Malcolm Wheeler Nicholson. He had been a soldier, then a pulp writer before deciding that he wanted to get into publishing comics. The problem was there was virtually nothing left of newspaper strips to repackage. So in 1934, he hired writers and artists to create original material. The name of this company was National Allied Publications. That's the forebear of DC Comics. Now, this whole video would have to be about the Platinum Age if I had to tell the whole story of, you've got, along with Malcolm Wheeler Nicholson, Jack Leibowitz and Harry Donenfeld, they got involved with the company. They eventually took it over in kind of a shady manner in early 1938. So, I mean, there are all kinds of things you can look up to get the details on that. Kind of not the proudest moment for DC. But now we can talk about the superheroes. Jerry Siegel and Joe Shuster, they first created Superman in 1938. So right at the time newspaper strips were getting repackaged into comics. Siegel and Shuster, they wanted the prestige of having Superman in the daily newspaper strips. Going straight to being in a comic book by a very small publisher, National Allied at the time, that was not that appealing. But they were getting turned down left and right by every publisher they submitted to, and I know the feeling. But you know, the aforementioned Eastern Color, they published Funnies on Parade. They had Maxwell Gaines who working for them, and he eventually decided to go into business for himself with All American Publications, which became kind of a sister company to DC. And back to 1938, Superman ended up in their hands, but they didn't feel like they could do anything with it. So when they found out that the DC bigwigs were tearing their hair out in need of a lead story for their new title, Action Comics, All American sent them Superman, and now we're in the Golden Age. So Siegel and Shuster, after wanting the prestige of having a Superman as a newspaper strip, all credit goes to them of their strip being made into a comic book. They blazed the trail for the original comic book gaining prestige, and because of Action Comics' #1 sales, they were off the charts, and DC naturally wanted to expand their titles based on this new idea of a costume crime fighter. So Bob Kane, he stepped in with writer Bill Finger to create Batman in 1939. In the next few years, such DC heroes as Wonder Woman, Hawkman, Wildcat, Green Arrow, the Alan Scott, Green Lantern, the Jay Garrick Flash, Dr. Fate, and the Spectre, several more beyond that. And also in 1939, Martin Goodman, he started Timely Comics, which we now call Marvel, with Prince Namor the Submariner. They picked that up from Motion Picture Comics. They were handed out in movie theaters in 1939, and they felt that would be their springboard to republish that in circulation. Then came the Human Torch, not the same one as the one you might see in the Fantastic Four. This was a completely different character. Captain America, Vision, the Angel, and the Destroyer, and a few others. But Timely wasn't the only publisher to jump on the superhero bandwagon. It's called Fox Publications. They came up with Blue Beetle and the Flame, several others. Nedor Comics came up with Black Terror, American Crusader, American Eagle, and several others. I could go on, but here I'll mention one more. Again, in 1939, Fawcett Publications threw their hat in the ring with what we now call Shazam, but originally he was called Captain Marvel, and DC gave up on that name because of the Captain Marvel that Marvel Comics has now. Now his golden age history is highlighted by DC Comics' lawsuit against Fawcett over his similarities to Superman. But what's interesting now is that not only did DC buy Shazam off of Fawcett, but the comic book world is littered with characters who are even more similar to Superman. And nowadays the personalities of each, they're the key to considering them to be original. And those super attributes are so interwoven in pop culture that it's hard to justify seeing all these incarnations as illegal ripoffs. But now, whenever you look deep into the Golden Age, you see two key overlapping historical topics that superheroes were created to address, and those were the Great Depression and World War II. And when the world made transitions out of the struggles of the Depression and the war, it's like there was less reason for superheroes to exist. They pretty much from there filtered out to the point where by 1953, the only consistently remaining superheroes were Superman, Batman, and Wonder Woman. And this, right here, we're at that point where comics in every genre came under attack over moral and behavioral objections. German-born psychiatrist Frederick Wertham published an anti-comic book called Seduction of the Innocent. Now, the comics that created the most ruckus were those of the hyper-violent crime and horror genres, pretty much slasher films on paper. But Dr. Wertham here was gunning at every genre as the root cause of all juvenile delinquency in America, and he felt superheroes were contributing to that as well. To him, Superman undermined all basic human authority, that children would be looking up to him instead of policemen, firefighters, and teachers. Batman and Robin were like a wish dream of two homosexuals living together, and Wonder Woman was the lesbian counterpart to Batman. So a moment to chuckle at all that. But Wertham's book was taken seriously enough that the public called out the comics industry and the government got involved. Now, for the first time, hopefully it won't be a recurring thing, I'll dip my proverbial toe into politics. One blemish on the 1950s and Republicans was Senator Joseph McCarthy. McCarthyism, anti-communism, and that crusade, which of course drew criticism from the Democrats, even some Republicans. Still, you can't help but think that there were some Democrats who wanted a social crusade of their own, because Democratic Senator and presidential hopeful Estes Kefauver led the charge, not so much against comics, but in the investigation of comics, with Frederick Wertham as the star witness and a few publishers also testifying. In the end, the Senate leaned heavily on the industry to put together a censorship committee, thus came the Comics Code Authority. Horror elements were restricted, no vampires, werewolves, or zombies. No crime depictions that children might emulate were allowed. No drug use, no sexual content, and no corrupt authority figures. Now, I have my own scruples when it comes to the content I engage in or write, but I couldn't effectively tell you what the right structure is for censorship is. I would not be comfortable with working under that comics code that I just outlined to you, because I have written scripts that depict corrupt authority figures, and also who's to decide if the crimes depicted in my stories are not the type kids would want to emulate. So I don't blame the comic creators of that time for feeling creatively stifled, And on the one hand, before Superman had already transitioned from having a social agenda to working side by side with authorities. And after the code was established, there were only minor adjustments, like setting the conflicts in a science fiction setting to avoid depicting crimes that kids might want to imitate. Batman, it wasn't so easy when it came to his established characterization. They brought in Batwoman and Batgirl. By Batgirl, that's not the ones in the 60s series. This one, the 60s series and beyond, that's Barbara Gordon, whereas this Batgirl's name was Betty Kane. Batwoman, Kathy Kane. They've been reinvigorated for today's age. They were love interests for Batman and Robin, and also set up sci-fi conflicts for the same reason as Superman, so that there would be no crimes that kids would want to imitate. And Wonder Woman, she got put closer to her love interest, Steve Trevor. Stories got blander. TV was becoming the new preferred entertainment medium, but amazingly, comics and superheroes soldiered on and managed to endure. Even though, not at a cost, because it suffered greatly. Sales went down, and a lot of publishers were shut down, and a lot of creators, writers, and artists lost their jobs. But now the code gradually got relaxed starting in the 70s when Marvel had a Spider-Man story with drugs to give an anti-drug message. Thought, okay, don't have to be so strict. But now, what to creatively pick up from the Golden Age? By taking a close look at the thought process behind the creation of the superheroes of that area, you pick up on whether or not it works in today's culture or adapts to today's culture. And I mentioned in my video about costumes that superheroes were wearing trunks over tights, and that was based on circus strongmen, which caused today's publishers to rethink how costumes need to be adapted. Heroes of the Golden Age often played rough, which reflected the outlook of the urban world of the time. A lot of people were fed up and were kind of had ideas of punching out the problems. But now we can look at their heroic acts and decide if that approach can inspire today's heroes' actions and attitudes now. But that's my insight into superheroes of the Golden Age. Thanks for watching. If you like this video, please click like. If you like this channel, please click subscribe and share this channel with your friends. The invitation remains open to purchase Sledge number 1. Just click that link below. I hope this can get some discussion going. Agree, disagree, something I didn't mention, please comment below. Let's all see and treat each other as equals amid this health scare. Be safe, and God bless. Bye-bye.